Welcome to Artistic Adventures. Did you notice that new intro video? I just got it. I thought it was time to change things up. So today we're going to make this cute little Blythe dress. I haven't done anything with my Blythe dolls lately, so let's do this one. All right. This is my Blythe doll Deirdre. I have four Blythes and I'm really obsessed with them. If you don't know by now, I do mention them occasionally. And if you see my Pinterest doll feed, you'll know that there's lots of pictures of that. And for those who don't know, Blythe dolls change their eye color and position when you pull that string on the back of their head. So she's got several different eye colors, which I thought went well with the dress colors that I picked. So I bought this material at a thrift shop. I got a whole box of different colors and then this lace from my friend Deb, who sends me beautiful vintage lace all the time. And so all these colors just sort of went well together, and I thought it would make a pretty spring dress with some ruffles. This is an old scarf that I found at a thrift store, and I thought the colors matched that main pattern really well. So did don't I think I didn't end up using everything. Like I had these little pearl buttons, and I ended up not using them, and a couple of other things, but anyway, you'll see as we go along. So the first thing I did is use fray check. This is really great stuff to make the edges of the fabric a little bit stiff and keep them from unraveling. Now this is the back of the doll dress top, and this is the front of the doll dress top. These are the facings that we'll use to put around the neckline. These are the sleeves. And then I have two ruffles, this one in purple, in the purple color, this one the same as the main dress. And then this is the front of the skirt. And you'll notice that in the front, I have it going up, and that's because I want it to be able to show off her cute little pantaloons that I'm going to make for her. And they'll be out of this green material. So everything is drying right now, and uh, after it does, then we can get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is put some lace, more of that vintage lace that Deb sent me, on the ends of these sleeves. Now, I think I've told you guys too that I don't really use patterns. I just sort of cut things out based on my experience with sewing. And I have to make this pattern in my head before I begin the video. I have to think of the design, then I have to think of how the pattern will work and cut it out, and then I have to think of how to put it together so that everything will work out. So it's kind of challenging, but it's what I like. So the next thing I'm going to do here is put some gathering threads up at the top, some loose threads, stitches, and also right above the lace, I'm going to put one because I'm going to gather the end of the sleeve up. And I'm doing the same to both sleeves. Now we're going to take the top front of the bodice and put that facing on. I'm just going to sew a very small seam up there, and then I'll turn it so that the opening of the neck has a nice finished look. All right, so then we're going to turn that like that, and we'll put a little stitch around that to hold it down right there. Now you want to clip that inner curved area there so it will turn properly. You clip almost down to the seam, and that will allow it to lay down instead of bunching up when you turn it. So I usually turn it and then press it with my fingers, and for this front part I am going to actually pin it because when I sew it I don't want it to become unattached to where I've put it, and then it would look, kind of sloppy. So yeah, I did use the dreaded pins. All right, so that turned out really nice. We've got a nice finished look. Although I am going to put some lace around there, I decided later. This is the back facing for the neckline, and because I'm going to turn this back seam down eventually, I didn't have the facing go all the way to the end because we have to have a finished seam there to put our Velcro on. So just a tiny little seam in there. And same thing, we're going to clip those edges at the curve down to the seam. And that will make it so that when we turn it, it's nice and smooth. Press it down with your fingers. This one is so small, I didn't pin it. I just went ahead and sewed right at the edge so that it would stay folded down. The nice thing about doing this thing with dolls is you can always put some trim or something around things to hide things that you don't want to show. Oh my gosh, I know I've done that a few times. All right, so now that we've got the two backs, they're ready. And you'll notice they're wider than they need to be because we're going to turn down that center seam and make a place for some Velcro later, but we'll do that when we sew up the back seam of the dress. And now we're going to bring out the front, which is ready, and we're going to put right sides together at the shoulder seam, and then we're going to sew about a 1/4, 1/8 of an inch seam across there. All right, and now that that's done, we have the top part sewn together at the top shoulder seams, and we're going to put the sleeves on. Now this lace I found that I put on the sleeves, I'm also going to gather some and put it, what was left of that piece, and put it at the neckline so it'll match. So I put a gathering thread in that and I gathered it, and then I'm just going to set that aside because I ended up sewing it on by hand a little bit later after the dress was finished. Now here's a technique you want to keep in mind. If you're using a short piece like this, tie off one end in a knot with with the gathering threads, and that's so it won't, like if you pull one side, it won't just keep pulling. It'll put a stop to the end of that and keep the other side open so that you can adjust the length of your gathered piece. So we're going to sew it right around there, but we're not going to use the machine for that. So now I'm going to pull that gathering thread up at the top of the sleeve, gather that up a little bit so she'll have a little poofy sleeve. And then we're going to attach that to the opening for the sleeve on the bodice. And I'm doing the sleeve this way because these small pieces would be too hard to sew it if you sewed the side seam together and then tried to sew the opening. Unless you did it by hand, you could do it that way. And I spent, I think, a lot of this video clipping all the gathering threads that I had. And after you turn it, you've got the nice gathered sleeve at the top. So now I'm going to pull that thread to gather that bottom part. And you could put elastic in here the same way I'm going to do the pantaloons, and I'll show you that in a minute. But I decided I just wanted to leave it loosely gathered. It's not so tight that she can't get her arm through. And this way we'll just go ahead and sew it up with that gather stitch in there, making sure we get that uh, sewed down really nicely so the threads don't come out. You have to be careful to sew that down or the gather could just fall right out. All right, so there's one sleeve, and I'm going to go off camera and finish the other one to save some time. But I think that's turning out really cute. I love the springtime fabric. All right, now this lace that I really like is a little too long. I want to leave about a 1/2 of an inch or more at the bottom of this ruffle. And so I'm going to run a gathering thread around around here, right in sort of in the middle of this piece, and then trim it so that I have the length that I need for my ruffle. And I'm just going to go right above where I sewed that gathering thread and trim off the excess of the lace. I may even be able to use the rest of this lace for something else later, but I really like the way the bottom of this looked and I wanted to use it. It's just a little bit too big for doll dresses. It's nice and long though, so I will get a nice ruffle out of it. And when you have a long piece like this, you're going to pull from both ends. That way you don't break the thread trying to pull your gathers all the way through to the end of this long piece. So pull a little bit on one end, get it sort of towards the middle, then go to the other side and pull. Now this is one of the ruffles that we're going to put down in the top of the skirt here is going to be gathered when we sew it to the bodice, but this part we're going to gather a little bit, and it's going to be sewn on top of that part that is cut up in the front, and it's sort of the basis for all the other stuff we're going to do. So we're going to go ahead and gather that just a little bit. Didn't need too much because it's not very long. And then this purple material, which is nice contrast, I'm going to make use of one of the features of the sewing machine that I haven't really made much use of, and that's the decorative stitches. And I'm going to put sort of a scalloped hem on the bottom of this purple ruffle and make use of those stitches. So you see, I have that white thread with the scallop look, and I got it a little too far from the edge, so I did go back and trim it. Just make sure you don't trim off any of the bottom of the threads or it'll come undone. All right, now I'm going to put a gathering seam up at the top there, as we are going to run a ruffle through this as well. One of the things I like about the sewing machine is that it has so many decorative stitches, and I really want to make use of them and make some nice doll clothes. All right, now that I have that purple ruffle done, what I want to do is measure it to make sure that it goes all the way around that bottom of the front of or the whole skirt, or the bottom of the skirt. So just going to have to keep adjusting the ruffle and make sure that I've got it the right size. Once I do that, then I'm also going to adjust the other ruffles to the same size as the purple one. So I'm just sort of measuring, putting them together and making sure I have about the same length. Okay, so that's done. Now I'm going to also do the same sort of procedure with the lace and make sure that I have that done. Now when you pull this lace, because it's so long, it tends to spiral. It sort of twists around. So you want to make sure you get it untwisted before you sew it, or you'll have kind of a knotted mess. So I'm going to go ahead and sew the lace to the top of that ruffle that's the same color as the body of the dress. And it's slightly gathered also, remember, not too gathered. So the nice thing about that fray check is that you don't have to worry about hemming certain things that you don't need to hem, because it stops it from unraveling and looking like a raw edge. Now that I've got that done, I'm going to sew that combined piece of the ruffle and the lace to the bottom of the skirt. And I'm just following the line of the bottom where it curves up in the front and sewing right across the top of that lace where I combined it. And I had a little bit left over at the end of the skirt. I'm just going to trim that off. It really doesn't matter. It's going to be all right. All right, so there's our ruffle and lace attached to the bottom of the skirt. That allows you to have a little ruffle of the same material, but it's not, the continuation of the skirt. So now I decided, since I like that scallop stitch so much, I'm going to go ahead and run that scallop stitch along the bottom of that ruffle. And that'll give it a little bit more of a finished look. Although the fray check keeps it from raveling, and in some ways it's sort of a finished look. I did like the way that it helped add a decorative touch to the purple, so I'm going to do it the same thing on that one. All right, now we're going to take the purple ruffle and we're going to sew right across where we ran the gathering thread and sew it just above where we sewed the lace, but leaving enough so that it hangs down over the top of the lace. All right, and it really is a nice contrast. It has almost the same exact color in that main pattern of fabric. Now we're going to run a gathering thread across the top of the skirt and we'll be prepared to sew it to the bodice. So just sort of, start pinning and look at it and make sure that you have it gathered enough so that it matches the length of the bottom of the bodice. And then just use your fingers to spread out the gathers and then pin it down. And then we'll be able to sew a seam in it. And that'll be almost a finished dress. Yay! I don't know if any of you guys have Blythe dolls. Do any of you have Blythe dolls? I'm obsessed with the way they look. I just think they're adorable. There's serious expression. All right, so that's how our dress turned out. We still have to do the back seam, but that's the main part. But you can see how the back is a little bit lower than the front. All right, so now we're going to sew up the back seam about halfway and make sure that we finish that in there so it won't come unraveled. And then we'll be able to fold over the top part to make an opening with finished edges, and we'll put our Velcro closure on that. And I'm just going to start on one side up at the top, go all the way down to that point where the seam is, and then right back up to the other side of the top. And then we have finished edges, and I'm going to glue some Velcro to that like I usually do, and that'll be the opening at the back. I'm taking this green material that's contrasting with the dress material, and I'm going to fold it over in half and then sew a gathering seam up at the top of that where the raw edges are. I'm going to gather that up, and I got intrigued with making these little flowers in my last video where I did the sweater, and I thought, I'm just going to make me another one of those. And they turned out so nice. So I make one out of the green flower, and that's going to be part of our decoration. Now I had this little small piece of vintage lace that I want to put on the pantaloon, so I cut it in half. We're going to do this so that it's the easiest way to sew it. You might not do this if it was an adult size, but for the doll size, this is the easy way to do it. Sew that seam on the outside of one leg, and then we're going to take the lace and sew it across the bottom. Now this way there won't be a seam for the lace on the outside of the pantaloons, and also it's easy to sew it straight across like that instead of trying to sew it after you've sewed up the leg. And then we're going to do the exact same thing on the other side of the leg, and then we're going to take some very small elastic, and after we've finished sewing the lace on, I think I showed you this in another video. Just get it started with your sewing machine so that you have it sewn down at the end, and it'll hold, and then pull it and sew right on top of the stretched elastic. And then and when you let it go, then it gathers it. And you got a nice little stretchy opening for your pantaloons. All right, then we're going to go over and do the same thing to the other side. Sewing the lace on. Then we're going to put our elastic down, stretch it, and sew it. Now we have the two sides done. All we have left is the inner seam. So we're going to match up our legs at the bottoms, and then sew starting on one leg up to the crotch, across, and I put an extra seam there at the crotch. And then we're going to clip that crotch area once again so that it will turn and not look all bunched up when we turn it. And trim off any excess edges that you have. And now I'm going to measure the waist of the doll with some elastic. I'm not stretching it, I'm just running it around there. And then allowing just a little bit extra so that you can overlap it and sew it by hand. Just run threads in and out, and make sure that it's nice and secure. Then I stretched it around this bottle. This is an easy way to do an elastic waist on a doll instead of trying to run elastic through a seam that you've made like a casing. All right, and then you move the elastic down on top, and then you can fold over the fabric and sew right across the top of that, and that makes your casing for the elastic. Now this wasn't as big as the material, so as I'm sewing, I keep it flat where I'm sewing and then push it back and gather it so that I can keep it straight where I'm sewing. So just go all the way around, and once you've got all that sewn, then you can take it off and turn it, and you'll have a nice sewn elastic waist that fits the doll and wasn't that hard to do. This is a really easy way to sew this on. Especially when you have a doll like a Monster High where their waist is like an inch around or less. I don't even think they're that wide. I think I've done this technique before and shown you how to do this. I think it was a Monster High, as a matter of fact. I think I made some lace leggings or something like that. All right, so there's our finished pantaloons with the elastic waist and the little gathered ends. And I also sewed this lace on the neckline by hand off camera. So we're just going to slip the pantaloons on, and then we'll have the finished look. I love the way all these colors go together. Doesn't that look nice and springy and bright? I just love it. I'm ready for spring. Get back in the pool. All right, now the finishing touch will be these cute little purple shoes that have like a bunny tail on the end. I just think that's adorable. So we're going to slip those on her feet, tighten up that strap around the ankle so they'll stay on. I just love Blythe shoes. They're so tiny and adorable, but really well made to be so tiny. I guess they're made by elves, right? Now this fabric that I found that was a scarf, I'm going to use kind of as a scarf. At one point I thought I might use it as a sash on the dress, but I think the dress is getting too many elements to it and it's a little bit too fuzzy with all the lace and everything. So I think she needed something for her hair. I like things that the Blythe dolls have a lot of hats and stuff, so I think this will turn out nice. I'm going to take that flower that I made and I sewed the back of it together so it wouldn't come apart. And I'm going to put that right in the center of my bow that I made. And guess what? Get to use some E6000. I don't think I've used it in this video yet. That's crazy. One of the viewers says I'm the queen of E6000. She's right. I think I use it almost daily for something. I should get them to sponsor me, really. All right, so we've got that glued down, and there's how it looks. I think that turned out really nice. So there's our doll with her pantaloons and her pretty shoes and her nice headband. I think all the colors go really well together. And there's her friend who's admiring her dress and saying, "Oh, you look so good, Deidre." Did you notice that crocheted hat? One of the viewers made that eggly. Isn't it beautiful? Now I'm going to show you the look with all the different eye colors. This is with the eyes to the side and the sort of amber color. This is in the center with purple, which is cool because she's got a lot of purple in that dress. And then this is looking to the other side, and she's got sort of a gold, I guess it's sort of a goldish brown color, eye color. And then back to the center, and it changes to blue, which I think it looks pretty also. So that turned out really well. I think I'll make some more Blythe clothes. I really love my little Blythe dolls. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. And as always, I hope you'll subscribe so you don't miss a thing. We have lots more coming up. Thanks, and bye.